Welcome back to the Sister Hold My Hand edition. My name is Roberta Ndlela, and I am with my co-host, the wonderful, world-renowned child psychologist, Dr. Michele Mcdowell, joining us today. Welcome. Hi, Dr. Michele.
Oh, hi, Roberta. Thanks for inviting me on. As you know, I always love coming on your podcast and channel, so I'm really, really excited to be here today.
I'm excited as well, especially because in the previous Sister Hold My Hand um, meetings, well, webinars that you've had, there's so much of your work that we love, especially because when it comes to it, which is what we have in common, is the communication aspect. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. So I would really, really love your input on that. But
No
basically,
problem.
Sister Hold My Hand is an organization that us as women, we come together to help other women, especially, but not exclusively, but we start with women to help them with business, relationship, parenting, whatever it is. And as you can see, even with our logo, sister, everybody needs handholding, everybody needs guidance, everybody needs a support system and a community. I have a mentor
Absolutely.
who said she founded a public speaking organization, and she said a lot of the time when she thought about it, she thought, oh yeah, people come here because they want to be speakers. Yes, but most importantly, they came to her, they said, I just wanted community. I wanted to be part of something.
That sense
And,
of
and that's
connection.
what we are about, yes. So one of the main things that I said we have in common, Dr. Michele, is the topic of communication. Why is communication so important? Why is it important not only in our personal lives, but professionally as well? A lot of us have taken our businesses online, and how do we distinguish in the way we communicate our messages? How do we distinguish? Because there's millions of online coaches and consultants and entrepreneurs. How do we distinguish ourselves from the rest? And it has stats, data, research has proven that it's the power of storytelling.
Hmm.
What is your story? And your story is unique. Nobody's gone through what Roberta has gone through. Nobody's gone through what Dr. Michele has gone through and her experiences. What is it about storytelling is so powerful that despite the concepts and the science and everything we want to show that we're experts in, but people always walk away with the story. Why is that?
I think because it's so much about connection. People like to gravitate to others that they think have a similar experience, and also to people that they feel that they can model themselves on. They'll have a joint understanding, some opportunity to be inspired and something to aspire to, but also for that sense of warmth and nurturing. So often when I'm working with parents, we'll talk about their own experience of being parented, because when they come through their own story of how they have been parented, they can see how that unfolds in themselves being parents. And then from that, they can draw what they would like to keep and those things that they would like to do differently. But it all stems from being able to draw back to that sense to who they are, where they come from, and what their story is. So I always found it really powerful. Often when I'm working with parents, I'm going back to thinking about the background to their early initial stages of parenting. And we see the
Mm.
alignment from how they have been parented themselves and that connection there. So it's really powerful. And I think it's something that you can continually revisit,
Right.
because each time we look at our personal stories again, we can almost look at a different emphasis of it. And you see things maybe slightly differently, and we may reflect on them differently. And that, I think, supports our own individual growth and self-development.
Absolutely, Dr. Michele. That's so beautifully said. Because when you look at your own story, the thing about it is you don't realize how many stories you've been telling yourself since childhood. If I think about why was I triggered in this moment, it's the story I told myself. I grew up with my brother. Okay, the other one came when I was a grown up, we were all adults. But the one that I grew up with was 5 years younger than me. we could have had the same experiences and the same teachings from my mom and dad, but he might have told himself a different story that in the same house than me, because there's something about the story we tell ourselves based on who we think we are,
Absolutely.
based on the messaging that we've grown up with, like you said, the parenting example, that how they parent is what they saw. So based on what you mimic as a child, based on what made you happy, because everything is usually tied back to emotion. That's why the connection piece comes in. So based on what made you happy when it happened, based on what made you sad when it happened, based on what hurt, based on what really made you jump for joy. And that's why you cannot remember, I'm 48, I cannot remember every single thing that has happened in my life, but usually the ones at the forefront of my brain and my memory are the ones with some emotion involved.
Yeah,
If there's
absolutely.
sadness
Your
and I'm
connection.
sad, I remember when I was sad 15, 20 years ago, if there's happiness, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like when I got a trophy at school. So everything, whenever the story is tied to an emotion, that's usually the ones you remember the most likely to repeat, most likely to what we call a cycle, most likely to repeat that, to keep going back to that place because of the emotion that's attached to that incident, to that experience. And the story we told ourselves about the experience.
Absolutely, because we are, researchers indicate that we are we are emotional beings. So we're attached to these emotions, and people spend years in therapy trying to ascertain where that emotion has come from, trying to sort of differentiate from what was the real objective story and what was that subjective emotion that you'd attached to it. And that's why we've spoken about EFT before. That's why I love using EFT, because what it supports us with doing is looking back at a memory, which might be quite triggering in an adverse way, and supporting us by still seeing that memory, but changing the emotional attachment you have to it, almost neutralizing that emotional attachment, which then will support you in your actions going forward, because it no longer has that dictation of, that dictating that emotion to you, which might impact on your behaviors, if that makes sense.
It does. And I'm glad that you brought up EFT because I should be more consistent in using it because I love EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. Some people know it as tapping, which is basically tapping different parts of your meridian, the different meridian points, parts of your face, your head, and sometimes your throat or here. And what happens is, as you make these statements, as you keep doing that, you first, let's say whatever the pain point is, it's from 1 to, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 10. Oh, when I think of this, I shake literally. So as the more you tap, when you go back to that scale of it being a 10, you'll find that it's a 6 because what has changed? The story hasn't changed.
No, but your emotional attachment to it has changed.
Exactly. Your emotional attachment, hence you say every story you tell yourself, the ones you remember usually have an emotion attached to it. And that's why they're at the forefront of your mind. So then when you understand yourself this well, when you come to peel off these layers and those layers, what we found with online entrepreneurs and coaches and businesses is that a lot of the time when they found their businesses, when they launched their businesses, it's usually attached to their personal story, then translating to, I want to help people overcome, the hero's journey. I was here, I went through these steps, I'm on the other side of it now. If you are going through the same thing, I can show you how to get there.
Absolutely.
Now, the thing about that is, and I don't know if this has been your experience, Dr. Michele, depending on if you've had how many online coaches you've had, but I once signed up for a coaching program and the founder said, I used to clean school toilets and mop to save up money, and I became a cheerleader, and then I had money, and then I started the business. And now here's the thing with that. If your story is not credible, we always say social media is better than the FBI or the CIA. They've got better detectives. If your story is not credible, somebody you went to school with is going to tell on you. Somebody you worked with is going to tell you. Dr. Michele, she comes from a very expensive suburb. She never get a single toilet. So they outed her, which means she lost credibility. We lost trust in her because she thought, and I can see how many people fall into the trap. People think you need to have a trauma of some sort in your past to have a story. Not necessarily.
You need to be authentic to yourself. So telling your own story is a real discovery of authenticity, isn't it? And the self-concept and self-esteem. Because really, you've got to accept yourself as you are and then express your story. Because you're going to struggle if you're trying to think, well, who am I really? Who am I really? Because you're going to, go down all these different avenues that aren't necessarily yours.
Mm.
So it's really important that you're able to hold on to who you are. Because like you said in the very beginning, everybody's story is important and there's only one you. So there's only going to be one story, even if you're an identical twin, they're going to have some different experiences, which makes up the you that they are. So it's really important, particularly with this world of social media that we find ourselves in, particularly with the emerging of AI. It's really important that we recognize and support our own individual subjective selves, because actually it's highlighting even more that all we really have is who we are authentically. Because once we merge into a world that wants us to change and adjust and, to what it is, we lose our sense of self. And then who are you? And what do you have to offer?
Who are you when everything external has been stripped off of you? Without the titles, without, I'm a psychologist, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm an auntie, I'm somebody's. Who are you? And that's the homework assignment that we'd like to give our viewers and our listeners today is.
Wow, that's a big one.
Who you are, who you truly, not somebody's title, not the title you have at work, not who I'm a coach of this. Who are you at your very core?
Yeah.
And the more you get answers to that, you ask another question, you peel off more layers and more layers and more layers. And I find that even when I interview podcast guests, when we have the briefing of about 2 minutes before we start recording, I'd say, please tell us something human about you. Because as soon as I say, Dr. Michele, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit of your background. I'm a child psychologist. You are not born a child psychologist. There's a guy, and I think it was last year. Listen to this. One of my previous guests said, I love Circle K pizza. That's gas station. You know what I mean? Usually when people talk about pizza, especially in Chicago, it's the dip dish, it's Pizza Hut, it's Domino's, whatever it is. I still remember him to this day because he said Circle K. Because a lot of people neglected thinking it's gas station pizza, but he loves the taste. And I still remember that. I don't remember everybody else has had a same pizza liking, because that's how he stood out. He showed the human element to him. Then he talked about his business. So please just explore, journal, whatever it is, do an exercise, do a quiz online, find out who you really are. Because once people find your authentic self, as Dr. Michele has explained, then they can connect with that. Whatever business you have, they will connect with that. And don't think you need to have some trauma. I had a podcast guest who is a huge public speaking trainer, like huge. Can I tell you something? One, she grew up in a loving, wonderful, loving, warm home. She said, Roberta, she's a year younger than me. She said, Roberta, I don't have a trauma, but she charges $55,000 for a 12-month program. And she has clients, and people think, I have to have some traumatic story for people to come to me.
Because it doesn't have to come from, it's your own individual story. And I think we did go through a stage, didn't we, in this whole sort of self-development arena where
Yes, as I was saying, sorry about that interruption, but yes, people need to realize that story is not trauma and everybody has a story. And therefore, what I would like to challenge you today is just explore your story so that whatever business you have, you tie that to your story, and that's what people will connect with. Any last words, Dr. Michele?
Absolutely. I think I love this because it's so important. I think we can lose ourselves now in technology and social media and think that we need to be comparable to others. But I think, Roberta, you're so on point when you say it's very much about who you are, what's your individual story. Because ultimately, I think wherever we are, whether it's from a psychologist to somebody that works in the corporate world, people connect to people. They don't connect to titles. They
Yeah.
connect to experiences, they connect to who this person is, they give them eye contact, do they understand where they are coming from, are they willing to listen? People connect to people, so it's really important that we have our stories there. Just before we go, I just wondered if I could hear a little bit of your story. I'm intrigued. What
Oh,
led
okay.
you to podcasting?
What led me to podcasting
Hmm.
was just quickly 15 years of corporate experience in South Africa. Now, I can just say it like that, or I can, basically what happened was 1990, so South Africa has this colorful history, we call it apartheid. 1994, apartheid ended
Yeah.
and we had democracy. And then 95 was my first corporate job. Now I'm going to a corporate job to be in a boardroom with people we were told all these decades to never be in the same town with.
Yeah.
Imagine that cultural exchange. It turned our heads upside down. And then also, after 15 years and then a decade in South Korea teaching English, if you thought it was an adjustment being home, this was worse because you even had a cultural and a language barrier too.
Hmm.
What I recognized in my story, the running theme was, which is why I started the podcast, was a lot of people when they cave, because even in Korea, some people think, oh, it looks nice, I'm going to teach kids and travel, but they leave within 2 months.
Hmm.
Whenever things get uncomfortable, whenever things are not familiar, we tend to cave, we tend to run away, we
Yeah.
flight, we freeze, we whatever it is, right? I learned over time that if you can learn to be adaptable, to be flexible, to know, because the thing about corporate was it also taught me that people who get promoted are not the smart ones. No one told me that at school. It's not just the
Hmm.
smart ones. Are you able to communicate? Because if you don't, I used to watch bosses take people's work credit for their work at meetings because these people are not talking. So when
Yeah.
people walk away, who do they think is smart? The one who spoke or the one who did the work?
Hmm.
So as I kept noticing those things, it answered all those questions. And that's what we discussed in the podcast, which is you wonder why you overlook for promotions. You wonder why some are leaders and you think, but they're not, I'm smarter than them. You wonder why some people can be in an uncomfortable. Here's the thing about running away in Korea. If you feel it's uncomfortable for you, you want to go back to your country before your contract ends. The contract is about 12 months. If discomfort makes you run every time, even in your country, something will be uncomfortable and you
Yeah.
will run every
Yeah.
time.
And that's the
And
reality.
exactly. So we wrap that up and we call them soft skills.
Hmm.
And that's what the focus of the show is. Soft skills. They will help you personally,
Hmm.
professionally, wherever you are. If you don't have, so
Yeah.
even in your online business, if you don't know how to listen to others, 2 ears, 1 mouth, using proportion. If you just say,
Yeah.
here's what I know, here's what I'm expecting, take it, take it, take it, take it. Instead of,
Yeah.
what is it that I can help you with, Dr. Michele? And then I
Yeah.
tweak my service offering to serve your needs instead of proving to you what an expert I am. I've had
Brilliant.
guests who help these startup companies get funding in Silicon Valley with Silicon Valley investors and venture capitalists. They say, they don't listen too much as the AI and the tech, and this is how we do the software and the data. As soon as you insert these cameras will help grandmas who are taken care of in old age facilities so that they're treated with dignity. Somebody there has a grandma and wondering, I wonder how these nurses treat my grandma. That's
Yeah.
his takeaway, not the tech as much. Yes, prove that you know your story,
Yeah.
but add the story for them to say, now I can see how this is going to work. I'm
And
putting
there
them
you
on
go.
that
That's where it comes full circle back to story and
story.
making that connection. So thank you
Story.
so much for that, Roberta.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much, Dr. Michele, for joining me today. And
Pleasure.
I'm always joyful to be in your presence. I appreciate you being here.
And you too. Appreciate you too.
Thank you to everyone watching. Please stay tuned to Sister Hold My Hand and log on to SisterHoldMyHand.com for more information on how we can support you.